This is the final slide. And my slides aren't very good. Everyone always says I have too many words on my slide. I don't listen to them. The present situation in the American press is dominated, utterly dominated, I would even say, by a single problem. And it's an unsolved problem. That is, we don't know the answer to it now, even though there's thousands of people trying to find it. Many with businesses on the line, professional futures on the line. They couldn't be more motivated to find an answer. And this is the unsolved problem. What sort of enterprise can best sustain serious work and itself in the years ahead? What kind of company, what kind of firm, what kind of newsroom? If it's a company, what does that company look like? If it's a nonprofit, how is that nonprofit to be organized and fed? If it's a startup, is there really a business there? Is there a way for big incumbent players to adapt and remain strong? Can the new players become quality providers? Can what's affordable today in journalism become public service quality? Can it be good enough to serve a real public? What I mean by an unsolved problem is that we don't have good answers to most of those questions now. We have occasional answers. There are places where it works. For example, Bloomberg, the company, is a way of answering what sort of enterprise can best sustain serious work and itself, because Bloomberg's corporate structure is such that it profits off a different product, the terminals it installs in financial centers around the world, which are very expensive and hugely profitable. It makes sense for it also to have a public or consuming-facing brand, and that's why it bought Businessweek and increasingly does its own journalism, because that combination makes the journalism part work. But we don't have a lot of Bloomberg. We have one. And so that's what I mean by an unsolved problem. The BBC solves it in a different way, through a license fee that every TV watcher in the UK has to pay. Meanwhile, there's a lot happening in this situation, defined by my deliverable, that historians should be gobbling up. For example, huge shifts in power. The unbundling of general interest news products means that specialist news or niche news products have much more traction than in the past, when the bundles or the portals really ruled. Writers are in some ways gaining power over publishers because they can develop their own constituency and move that constituency around in a very independent way. Users are gaining more power relative to journalists because they have more choices, and they can also become providers themselves. They can communicate laterally, not just to big media or from big media. Many of the ways that journalists tried to add value in the press don't work in the present, which is why my friend Jeff Jarvis says, do what you do best and link to the rest. That's a profound statement about a shift in practice caused by changes in the underlying media system. See, if you use the things I'm teaching you, you will be smarter. That's what I'm trying to show you. On the internet, every address is equidistant from every other address. Every page is equally available to every user. Those are changes in the underlying media system that rearrange stuff happening many layers above. And that's why these destructive but also releasing waves of destabilizing change are coursing through journalism. We have an unsolved problem in the United States, but in the UK, where they have the BBC, and in Australia, where they have the ABC, both funded in a different way, the problem is different, which is why it's a country-by-country thing. The powerful people in any country will always find a way to inform themselves. Democratic publics can choose to do that or not. And the unsolved problem that I pointed you to is just part of this larger puzzle, which is, will publics continue to choose to be informed if they're given the means? We don't actually know the answer to that. The American press, the way I think of it, as a professor at NYU, as a writer, as a blogger, as a teacher, is an institution that was created by Americans 250 years ago to endure across technological eras, across market conditions, across political eras, across public opinion. That's the whole idea of the press, is it has to keep going because the country has to continue to be a republic. When the United States was founded, existing political wisdom said you can't have a republic over such a large territory. It won't work. Republics have to be small. They have to be more like city-states. And the founders of the country listened to this. They said, that's true. That's what conventional wisdom has been. But we don't think that applies here. Because even though we have this huge country, which goes from Maine to Georgia, we have these other things that we think will allow us to remain connected enough that we can be one country, one republic. We have roads, right? We have a post office. We have, and we're going to build canals so that we can, and we'll have the press. So that's the start of the American press. When people incorporated the effectiveness of news into the very viability of a republic on a continental scale. But nothing guarantees that that press will actually go on. You can't constitutionally guarantee it. That's against the First Amendment. And so the only thing that sustains the press are the American people themselves. And that's why it's important for journalism as a social practice not to be confined to a profession. It has to be rooted deeper than that because it has to go on from generation to generation. So we have the tools to bring the press forward successfully in this country into another technological era. We have the tools in law, in a professional tradition that is very strong, in a culture built up around journalism, which is very strong, but it doesn't mean that it will happen. Big media will go on. Entertainment will go on. But these are the constituent forces of consumer capitalism and modern society itself. The media doesn't care that much about the American Republic. It sees it as a source of cheap content, good storylines, good guys, bad guys, good copy, but doesn't have that commitment to its future the way a public service press does. So that's my description of the present moment. That's the end of my slides. And I want to make sure we have time for Q&A, so we're going to stop it right there. Thank you.